Sarah Thompson stepped off the transport truck with her duffel slung over one shoulder, her expression calm, almost detached. The Nevada desert sun beat down on the sprawling U.S. military base, a vast network of barracks, training grounds, and firing ranges that stretched toward the horizon. Dust swirled lazily across the tarmac, reflecting the harsh brilliance of the day, but Sarah barely noticed. She had been through environments far harsher, both physically and mentally. Here, among uniformed soldiers bustling to their assignments, she felt almost invisible, and that was precisely how she wanted it. She moved with quiet purpose, her boots crunching against gravel as she navigated the familiar maze of chain-link fences, guard posts, and signage warning of live fire exercises. New recruits and enlisted soldiers glanced at her briefly, some nodding politely, most ignoring her. They assumed she was just another administrative clerk, a cog in the vast machinery of the military. They didn't see the intensity in her eyes, the subtle way her hands flexed at her sides, as if memorizing every angle, every shadow of the terrain. Inside the small office at the heart of the firing range, Sarah dropped her duffel beside her desk and ran her fingers over the stack of paperwork waiting for her attention. She checked schedules, verified weapon inventories, and reviewed safety protocols with methodical precision. Everything had its place. Every form had a sequence. Every rifle was cataloged, cleaned, and stored in alignment with regulations that seemed trivial to most. But for Sarah, these routines had a rhythm, a discipline that reminded her of her past life, a life of meticulous training and calculated precision, far removed from the mundane duties of filing reports. The office was quiet except for the hum of ceiling fans and the occasional clatter from the outdoor ranges. Soldiers passed by, some heading toward the firing lanes, others grabbing gear or checking targets. They looked at Sarah with mild curiosity, but mostly indifference. She existed in a liminal space, neither a commanding officer nor a subordinate soldier. She was a fixture, a background presence. Occasionally, someone would joke about her seriousness. "Don't burn yourself out, Clerk Thompson," one young private said with a grin, tossing a paper target onto a cart. She smiled politely, not because the joke amused her, but because politeness was another layer of camouflage. Her colleagues didn't know, or perhaps they didn't care about the years before she arrived at this base. They didn't know about the missions she had carried out in foreign lands, the impossible shots she had taken from unimaginable distances, or the lives she had silently ended to save others. All that history was folded neatly behind her calm demeanor, concealed beneath her clerical attire. If anyone had tried to guess, they would have pictured a quiet, unassuming administrator, perhaps a meticulous organizer, not a lethal sniper with 121 confirmed kills, each one a testament to skill, patience, and survival instinct. Sarah leaned back in her chair, eyes scanning the horizon visible through the office window. Beyond the fences, the range sprawled with sandbags, target stands, and rows of firing lines stretching into the distance. The wind carried the faint smell of gunpowder, a scent that stirred old memories, both haunting and comforting. Here, in this desert expanse, she could observe without interference, assess without scrutiny. She had learned long ago to blend in, to exist unnoticed until the moment she was needed. Today, she was needed only to maintain order, to ensure safety, and to keep the machinery running smoothly, but her mind remained alert, always calculating, always ready. A sudden shout drew her attention. Private Daniels had misaligned a target, and a supervising officer barked orders for correction. Sarah watched as he scrambled, fumbling with the equipment. Without thinking, she rose, moving with fluid, almost imperceptible grace toward the scene. "Here," she said softly, adjusting the target stand with a deft flick of her hands. The officer glanced at her, surprised by her intervention, but said nothing. Daniels looked up, blinking at the calm authority in her tone, the certainty of her actions. He had expected confusion, perhaps a reprimand, but Sarah's presence carried a different weight, one that commanded attention without raising her voice. Returning to her desk, she made quick notes, ensuring the incident was logged correctly. Every action had a record, every decision documented. Soldiers often assumed clerical work was mundane, but Sarah approached it as seriously as she had approached any mission. Precision mattered here, too, not the precision of a rifle's trajectory, but the precision of procedure, order, and accountability. It was all part of the discipline that defined her, a discipline honed through countless hours of training, practice, and survival under conditions far harsher than any office. Her lunch break came, though she barely acknowledged it. Sitting alone under the shade of a corrugated roof, she unwrapped a simple sandwich and sipped from a water bottle, scanning the range. Soldiers passed by in small groups, laughing, teasing, some shooting targets with predictable inaccuracy. Sarah observed silently, noting the wind's direction, the angle of sunlight, the subtle undulations in the sand that could affect a shot. Every detail mattered. In another life, these small observations could mean the difference between success and failure, life and death. Here, they were just practice, yet the reflexive analysis persisted, uncheckable. A few minutes later, the office phone rang, pulling her back into the rhythm of work. She answered efficiently, noting equipment requests, scheduling maintenance, and relaying instructions to personnel in the field. Her voice was calm, even professional, belied by the intensity behind her eyes. Every interaction reinforced her unassuming persona, the cloak that hid her true capabilities. Those who listened carefully might notice an edge in her tone, a subtle authority, but most didn't. They continued to see only the clerk, not the sniper, not the woman who had mastered survival and lethality far beyond their understanding. By mid-afternoon, the sun had shifted, casting long shadows across the range. Sarah walked the firing lanes, clipboard in hand, ensuring compliance with safety protocols. She moved deliberately, her posture relaxed yet alert, eyes scanning for potential hazards. Occasionally, a soldier glanced her way, catching a fleeting sense of her intensity, but they quickly dismissed it. She was quiet, unassuming part of the scenery. Yet within her, a quiet storm of experience, skill, and vigilance waited, latent but ready. Every rifle she inspected, every target she checked, she approached with the same methodical attention she had applied in far more dangerous circumstances. As the day wound down, Sarah filed the last of the paperwork and checked inventory. Each weapon meticulously accounted for, each form signed and logged, she allowed herself a moment of stillness. The base around her hummed with routine, a rhythm she could navigate blindfolded. Soldiers laughed, officers bickered, targets clanged in the distance, and through it all, Sarah remained a constant, unremarkable on the surface, yet extraordinary beneath it. She glanced out the office window one last time, the desert stretching endlessly beyond. The sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sand with hues of orange and gold. A slight breeze stirred the dust, carrying with it the faint smell of spent gunpowder, a scent that felt almost like home. In that quiet, fleeting moment, she allowed herself a subtle acknowledgement of the life she had led, the missions, the discipline, the relentless focus. No one at the base knew her story. No one could imagine it. And that was exactly how she wanted it. Sarah Thompson returned her attention to the desk, reviewing notes for the next day. Outside, the range quieted as soldiers concluded their exercises. She sat, calm and composed, the unassuming clerk once again merging seamlessly into the background of the Nevada desert base. Yet beneath the surface, the precision, skill, and lethal history remained, unseen, unacknowledged, waiting for the moment when the colonel, or anyone perceptive enough, would finally recognize the truth of who she was. And in that vast, sun-bleached expanse, The quiet clerk was more than a clerk. She was a shadow of precision, a ghost of lethality, a force waiting patiently to reveal itself. The desert sun climbed higher the next morning, casting a harsh glare over the sprawling Nevada base. Sarah Thompson arrived at her office before most soldiers had even stepped onto the range. She carried herself with the same quiet, deliberate precision that had defined her every movement since arriving. Nothing about her appearance suggested the history that lay beneath the surface. Her uniform was neat, hair pulled back in regulation style, boots polished. To an observer, she was ordinary, competent, unremarkable. But her mind, ever alert and calculating, scanned the environment with a sniper's focus. Every shadow, every shift of the wind, every glint of metal was catalogued instinctively. She began the day with routine checks of the weapons inventory. Each rifle, each sidearm, each round of ammunition was verified and logged meticulously. While filing forms and inspecting firearms, Sarah couldn't help but notice inconsistencies that others ignored. A slightly worn barrel, an irregularity in the trigger mechanism, a subtle misalignment in scope small details that could mean nothing to the casual observer, but could affect accuracy under extreme conditions. Her fingers traced the surfaces almost subconsciously, assessing angles, tensions, and balance. Every weapon she touched, every rifle she examined, became a silent study in precision and control. Soldiers trickled onto the range, chatting and joking among themselves. Some practiced marksmanship, while others prepared targets for live-fire drills. A few glanced at Sarah as she passed, noting her calm demeanor, but they barely registered her presence. Her eyes, however, scanned the environment with the intensity of a predator, silently calculating trajectories, wind drift, and target placement. It was the same focus she had relied on during covert missions, when one misjudgment could be fatal. Here, the stakes were lower, but her instincts remained sharp, unshaken, always alert. Private Daniels, the same soldier from yesterday, approached with a slight frown, struggling to adjust a target that had been knocked over by wind. "I think it's aligned now," he muttered, uncertain. Sarah stepped forward without a word, her movements fluid and effortless. In a single motion, she adjusted the target, ensured its stability, and pointed out an imperceptible misalignment in the stand. Daniels blinked, momentarily speechless, unsure how a clerk had identified something he had overlooked. Sarah merely nodded politely, returning to her clipboard. To most, it was a minor correction. To Sarah, it was an opportunity to observe, to test subtle skills that had once saved lives. By mid-morning, the range was bustling. Soldiers trained in formation, instructors barked orders, and targets clanged as bullets struck with varying degrees of accuracy. Sarah observed silently, making mental notes. One soldier struggled with wind compensation, another misjudged recoil, while a third failed to account for distance. Each mistake was an opportunity to analyze patterns, anticipate corrections, and refine strategies. Without ever lifting a rifle herself, Sarah's understanding of marksmanship was evident in the precision of her observations. She could predict trajectories, estimate velocity, and calculate adjustments with uncanny accuracy abilities honed through years of covert operations and sniper training. Occasionally, a curious officer would glance at her, noting the intensity behind her calm gaze. Some whispered, speculating about her past, but most dismissed it. Sarah didn't engage. She had learned early that attention drew scrutiny, and scrutiny could be dangerous. Remaining unnoticed was a skill she had cultivated as carefully as her aim. Every expression, every gesture, every word was measured. Her quiet efficiency created a shield, allowing her to navigate the base unnoticed while maintaining control over her environment. Soldiers assumed she was diligent, thorough, perhaps meticulous, but they could not imagine the lethal precision behind that composure. Around noon, an unexpected event disrupted the routine. A senior instructor requested immediate assistance, as one of the new recruits had accidentally misaligned a long-range target, affecting the entire squad's drill. Sarah moved swiftly toward the line, clipboard in hand, observing the situation. The soldiers watched, surprised to see her volunteer. Without hesitation, she assessed the stand, measured the subtle angles, and corrected the target with a single, precise motion. The instructor, initially skeptical, nodded in approval, murmuring something about instinct and skill. The young recruit stared in awe, unsure how the clerk had made adjustments that even seasoned shooters struggled to achieve. As the afternoon progressed, Sarah continued to work quietly, blending administrative tasks with subtle interventions on the range. She corrected minor mistakes, offered guidance without overt instruction, and maintained a presence that seemed innocuous to those around her. Yet each movement, each glance, carried the weight of expertise. She had learned long ago that the most effective actions often went unnoticed, executed silently but with decisive impact. In her mind, the range was a chessboard. Each soldier a piece, each adjustment a calculated move designed to maintain order and ensure optimal performance. During a brief break, Sarah sat under the shade of a nearby structure, sipping water and watching the soldiers practice. The desert wind shifted, carrying the faint smell of gunpowder. Her eyes scanned the horizon, noting the direction of sunlight, the texture of the sand, and the subtle sway of target stands. Even in rest, her mind remained alert, analyzing the environment for variables most would never consider. Her observations were automatic, a result of years spent in situations where every detail mattered. A single miscalculation could mean failure, injury, or death, lessons she had learned repeatedly in far more dangerous contexts than this Nevada range. Private Daniels approached again, this time more cautiously. "Ms. Thompson, how do you always notice everything?" he asked, genuinely puzzled. Sarah offered a small, polite smile. "Experience," she replied simply, letting the answer hang in the air without elaboration. Daniels frowned, unsure what to make of it. Her response was accurate, but incomplete. Experience implied knowledge, skill, and practice, but it didn't hint at the countless missions, covert operations, or sniper engagements that had shaped her instincts. He couldn't imagine that the clerk who calmly adjusted targets and logged forms had once operated in high-stakes combat zones, unseen, uncelebrated, yet profoundly lethal. The day wore on, and Sarah continued to navigate her dual existence, visible but invisible, present but unnoticed. Soldiers sought her guidance unknowingly, following her subtle corrections and suggestions, without realizing the depth of her understanding. Her precision and calm authority began to earn quiet respect. Even those who initially dismissed her as a mere clerk started to notice patterns in her interventions, small but significant adjustments that improved accuracy, efficiency, and safety across the range. Rumors began to swirl, faintly, but most dismissed them as exaggerations. No one yet suspected the truth. As the sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the desert sands, Sarah reviewed the day's logs. Every weapon accounted for, every exercise documented, every minor incident noted. The office hummed quietly around her as soldiers wrapped up exercises, chatting and packing gear. She allowed herself a brief moment of reflection, acknowledging the rhythm of the day and the control she had maintained over the environment. It was a small victory, silent and unremarked by anyone else, but it mattered deeply. Maintaining order, precision, and vigilance was a habit ingrained over years, a discipline that had once meant life or death. Her thoughts drifted briefly to her past, the missions she had never spoken of, the engagements that remained classified. Each memory was sharp and clear, a reminder of the skills that now defined her quietly at this base. She had survived by observation, calculation, and deadly precision. Here, she merely applied those skills to mundane tasks, but the underlying instincts were unchanged. Sarah Thompson, the clerk, was more than a clerk. She was a silent observer, a hidden master of skill, waiting for the moment when her true abilities might be called upon again. As the final shadows stretched across the range, Sarah packed up her equipment, ensuring everything was in order for the next day. The base quieted, soldiers returned to their quarters, and the desert exhaled under the fading light. Sarah lingered for a moment, eyes scanning the horizon, noting the shifting patterns of wind and sand. She was invisible to the casual observer, a fixture in the background of routine life. But beneath that calm exterior lay the instincts of a sniper, honed over years of silent, precise, and deadly work. And as she walked back to her quarters, duffel in hand, clipboard tucked under her arm, Sarah allowed herself the tiniest of smiles. The day had been ordinary in appearance, yet every moment had been a rehearsal, every observation a study, every interaction a subtle exercise in skill and control. The soldiers believed her to be just a clerk. They didn't know the truth. They had no idea who she really was or what she was capable of. Sarah disappeared into the fading light, quiet and unassuming, yet profoundly extraordinary. The morning air carried a crisp edge, unusual for the Nevada desert, as Sarah Thompson approached the firing range. Soldiers were bustling about, checking targets, adjusting rifles, and reviewing their drills for the day. Today was meant to be routine, a standard marksmanship exercise, but something in the air hinted at disruption. A sudden announcement crackled over the intercom. A surprise drill was underway, and the range was understaffed. Instructors barked orders to scramble, while soldiers exchanged uncertain glances. Chaos rippled through the training area, and it became clear that someone would have to step in to maintain order. Without hesitation, Sarah moved into the fray. Clipboard tucked under her arm, she assessed the situation with the calm precision of a seasoned operative. Soldiers were fumbling with gear, targets were misaligned, and instructors were struggling to issue clear commands. The noise was overwhelming commands shouted over gunfire, metal clanging against sandbags, and the nervous murmurs of untrained recruits. Sarah's eyes scanned the range like a hawk, calculating trajectories, wind direction, and timing. Every movement was deliberate, efficient, purposeful. The chaos was temporary, and she knew exactly how to restore order. A nervous recruit dropped a rifle, and it clattered loudly against the concrete. An instructor swore under his breath, scrambling to retrieve it. Sarah moved toward the scene, her posture relaxed but authoritative. "Here," she said softly, adjusting the rifle and checking the alignment of the sights. Soldiers paused, watching her with surprise. Her voice carried no threat, no overt authority, yet every word commanded attention. She adjusted the target stand with a flick of her wrist, correcting angles imperceptible to anyone else. The recruit looked at her, wide-eyed, unsure how this quiet clerk had taken control so effortlessly. The instructors began to notice. One senior officer, a tall man with a graying jaw, frowned as he observed Sarah. "Who is she?" he muttered to another. "That's just a clerk," came the reply. But Sarah's presence was undeniable. She moved down the firing line with a fluid precision that belied her administrative role. Every shot fired under her guidance struck closer to the mark. Trajectories were corrected before rifles were even re-aimed, wind adjustments anticipated, minor errors neutralized. Soldiers whispered to each other, incredulous at what they were witnessing. How could a clerk outperform trained shooters in real time? The drill escalated. Targets were set at increasingly difficult distances, angles shifted, and environmental variables, sun glare, wind gusts, and sand challenged every soldier on the line. Sarah remained unfazed, her calm demeanor unbroken. She bent slightly, observing a rifle misaligned by mere millimeters, and corrected it with the ease of a master craftsman. The instructor supervising that section froze, mouth slightly open. She's adjusting it perfectly, he muttered under his breath. Soldiers glanced sideways, confused. Who was this woman? How did she know exactly what to do in a situation that left seasoned trainers scrambling? Then came the moment that would define the drill. A long-range target had been misaligned at an impossible distance. Several snipers attempted adjustments, calculating wind drift, bullet drop, and elevation, yet every shot veered slightly off course. The tension was palpable. Sarah stepped forward, crouched slightly, and examined the stand. Her eyes narrowed subtly, measuring angles and considering variables invisible to others. In a single motion, she adjusted the rifle, recalibrated the target, and directed the trainee on stance and breath control. The next round of fire was flawless, every shot hitting dead center. The range erupted in murmurs of astonishment. Soldiers and instructors alike were stunned. Whispers of disbelief spread rapidly. Did she just... How does she know that? I've never seen anyone do that. Sarah's movements were silent, almost effortless, yet each action carried authority. No one could explain how a clerk, a woman whose duties were assumed to be strictly administrative, had mastered the art of marksmanship in a way that rivaled the base's most trained personnel. It was as if she possessed an instinctive understanding of weapons, physics, and human error that transcended ordinary experience. Colonel James Whitaker, who had arrived for an unannounced inspection, observed from the edge of the range. At first, he assumed the rumors about the clerk were exaggerated. But as he watched Sarah manipulate rifles, guide soldiers, and correct trajectories flawlessly, his skepticism vanished. His trained eye recognized skill, precision, and confidence. This was not luck. This was mastery. Every movement, every adjustment, every subtle command revealed experience beyond the ordinary, beyond what he had ever encountered in administrative staff. Whitaker's curiosity intensified. He noted the way Sarah's eyes tracked the subtle sway of targets, her breath control, the perfect timing of instructions delivered without raising her voice. Each soldier responded instinctively to her subtle corrections. He realized that her presence transformed chaos into order, inefficiency into precision. And yet, she remained calm, unassuming, almost invisible in demeanor. Whitaker felt a mixture of awe and disbelief. How had such skill gone unnoticed for so long? He resolved to learn more, to discover the true depth of her capabilities. Meanwhile, Sarah continued her work, unaware of the magnitude of attention she had drawn. To her, it was simply a matter of maintaining order and ensuring that everyone performed to the best of their ability. Precision and control were habits ingrained over years of rigorous training, habits that could not be turned off, even in a civilian administrative role. She moved seamlessly from one section of the range to another, observing, correcting, and guiding with silent authority. Every action, while seemingly casual, reflected the instincts of someone who had survived high-stakes situations countless times. As the drill neared its conclusion, instructors and soldiers began to approach her, some hesitantly, others openly seeking her guidance. "Clerk Thompson," one instructor said, "how did you know to adjust the wind compensation exactly like that?" Sarah smiled faintly, a polite but reserved expression. "Observation," she replied simply, offering no further explanation. The simplicity of the answer only fueled the astonishment of those around her. They had expected technical jargon, complicated calculations, or references to manuals, but instead, she offered something far more mysterious: innate skill born of experience. By the end of the day, the drill had become a testament to her hidden capabilities. Soldiers left the range muttering about the clerk who had performed with the precision of a master sniper. Instructors conferred privately, exchanging glances filled with disbelief and respect. Even the trainees who had struggled the most found themselves inspired, amazed by her ability to elevate their performance through subtle guidance. Sarah returned to her office quietly, clipboard in hand, logging the results, adjusting schedules, and preparing for the next day with the same calm efficiency she had demonstrated all morning. Colonel Whitaker lingered at the range's edge, observing her final movements. Every adjustment she made, every interaction with soldiers, confirmed what he had suspected. This clerk was extraordinary. The way she blended administrative duties with tactical expertise was unprecedented. He realized that her talents were not confined to marksmanship. They encompassed observation, timing, strategy, and an almost preternatural understanding of human behavior. She had taken control of the drill without overt authority, transforming disorder into precision. The lesson was clear. Appearances were deceptive, and extraordinary skill could be hidden in the most unassuming form. As the sun dipped below the desert horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet, Sarah completed her day's work. Soldiers departed, instructors packed equipment, and the base settled into the quiet rhythm of evening. She filed the last forms, cataloged the weapons, and ensured the firing lanes were secure. Everything was in order, precise, controlled, a reflection of the discipline that defined her. She paused for a moment, eyes scanning the fading light over the range. Chaos had been tamed today, not through authority or rank, but through skill, observation, and silent mastery. Whitaker finally approached her, curiosity etched into his face. "Clerk Thompson," he said, voice steady but carrying an edge of intrigue, "tell me, what exactly is your background?" Sarah looked at him calmly, eyes steady, offering no immediate response. The question lingered in the air, heavy with implication. For the first time, someone in authority seemed genuinely aware that her ordinary facade hid something far more extraordinary. In that moment, the quiet clerk was no longer invisible. She was being seen, and perhaps finally understood. The drill concluded, but its echoes remained. Soldiers whispered stories of the clerk who had performed with uncanny skill. Instructors discussed her talent in hushed tones, unable to reconcile the administrative role with the lethal precision they had witnessed. And Sarah, quietly organizing her paperwork and checking weapons, allowed herself the smallest hint of acknowledgement. Her abilities had gone unnoticed for long enough. Today, she had revealed a fraction of her true self. The world at the Nevada base would never view her the same way again. Sarah left the range that evening with her usual calm composure, but inside, a faint anticipation stirred. The day had shifted something fundamental. Her hidden life of skill and discipline had pierced the mundane, hinting at recognition, questioning, and curiosity. Soon, someone with authority would demand answers, and when that day came, she would have to decide how much of herself to reveal. For now, she walked quietly, blending with the desert shadows. Invisible yet unmistakably extraordinary. Colonel James Whitaker stood at the edge of the Nevada firing range, a clipboard in hand, though it had long ceased to serve any practical purpose. His eyes were fixed on Sarah Thompson, the unassuming range safety clerk who had, with quiet authority, orchestrated the chaos of the surprise drill earlier that morning. He had observed her from a distance, initially skeptical, assuming that the rumors about the clerk's remarkable skills were exaggerated. Yet now, after hours of watching her silently move among the soldiers, correcting minor mistakes and guiding the untrained with an almost preternatural sense of timing, Whitaker's skepticism had evaporated. Her movements were deliberate, fluid, and unhurried, yet every action carried precision. She adjusted targets that were misaligned by mere millimeters, guided recruits with subtle corrections to their stance, and predicted the effect of the wind on bullets fired from a distance with uncanny accuracy. Whitaker had seen hundreds of soldiers in his career, including highly trained marksmen and instructors, but none moved with the quiet command she displayed. Her calm composure and confidence were not learned traits. They were instincts forged under pressure, honed over years of experience in life and death scenarios, far removed from this administrative setting. Whitaker scribbled notes on his clipboard, his brow furrowed. He realized that her abilities went far beyond marksmanship. They encompassed observation, strategy, and leadership, all delivered without authority or rank. She had orchestrated the range with the precision of a general commanding troops in combat, yet no one had realized it. The soldiers responded to her guidance instinctively, almost reverently, unaware that they were following the actions of someone who had saved countless lives in dangerous operations overseas. Whitaker's mind raced, attempting to reconcile the quiet clerk before him with the lethal capabilities he had just witnessed. He decided to watch her more closely over the next few days, without revealing his intentions. Observing Sarah from a distance, he noted the meticulous way she approached her duties, checking weapons, verifying ammunition, cataloging equipment, and ensuring that safety protocols were followed to the letter. But beneath this administrative veneer was an extraordinary skill set. She could anticipate errors before they happened, detect the subtlest deviations in rifle alignment, and instruct soldiers in ways that transformed novices into precise shooters almost instantly. The depth of her knowledge was staggering, and the colonel could sense the discipline that lay behind every small movement. Whitaker's curiosity grew, and he began asking other instructors discreetly about her past. They confirmed what he already knew. Sarah had arrived as a range safety clerk, a purely administrative position. There were no special assignments, no accolades, nothing in her record that hinted at the extraordinary skill he had observed. Yet he had seen enough to know that this was not an illusion. She was extraordinary, operating under a facade of ordinariness. The question now pressing in his mind was why? Why had someone with such lethal proficiency been assigned to clerical duties? And more importantly, what was she capable of if truly called upon? Sarah moved among the soldiers as she always did, clipboard in hand, correcting minor mistakes without fanfare, observing with a quiet intensity that seemed to penetrate every action. Her eyes scanned the horizon, the angle of sunlight, the sway of targets, and the subtle movements of the shooters. She calculated wind drift, bullet drop, and trajectory adjustments mentally, almost automatically. Whitaker noticed these actions and realized that this was not training or habit. It was instinct, honed under conditions where every calculation mattered for survival. The realization sent a shiver down his spine. This was no ordinary clerk. He began following her routine throughout the day, noting interactions and behavior patterns. Sarah's subtle interventions improved efficiency, accuracy, and safety across the range. Soldiers who had initially ignored her began to seek her guidance, not because of rank, but because of her knowledge and precision. Whitaker's respect deepened, mixed with awe and a sense of foreboding. He had met many skilled soldiers in his career, but few had commanded authority and influence purely through competence and presence. Sarah's talent was invisible to most, yet undeniable to anyone paying attention. During a mid-afternoon inspection, Whitaker observed her approach a group of recruits struggling with a long-range exercise. Their rifles were misaligned, their stances incorrect, and their timing off. Without raising her voice, Sarah corrected the errors, offering small adjustments in posture, grip, and focus. Each instruction was delivered with precision, and almost immediately, the recruit's performance improved. Whitaker's notes grew longer. He could barely keep up with the evidence of her skill. This was no clerical aptitude. It was tactical brilliance, operational mastery, and situational awareness combined. He could feel it in his bones. Sarah was exceptional in ways he had never encountered before. The colonel reflected on his own career as he watched her. He had served in multiple theaters, led countless operations, and trained thousands of soldiers. Yet nothing had prepared him for the quiet authority and lethal competence of this unassuming clerk. He realized that rank, accolades, and assignments often concealed talent rather than revealed it. Here was someone whose skill had remained dormant or perhaps deliberately hidden, waiting for observation, recognition, and the right opportunity to manifest. Sarah had operated under the radar, yet every movement, every decision, spoke volumes to those who truly saw her. Whitaker decided to test her subtly. He arranged a controlled exercise, deliberately inserting complications and challenges that would stretch ordinary soldiers to their limits. He observed from a hidden vantage point, curious to see how she would respond. As the drill progressed, Sarah's expertise became more apparent. She anticipated failures before they occurred, corrected misalignments instantly, and guided soldiers to perform flawlessly under pressure. The level of control she exerted over the environment was astonishing. Whitaker scribbled notes furiously, recognizing that he was witnessing skill and instinct honed to perfection. By late afternoon, the drill concluded with resounding success. Soldiers who had begun the day uncertain and clumsy now performed with remarkable accuracy and coordination. The instructors exchanged incredulous looks, their respect for the clerk growing with every passing minute. Whitaker stepped forward, finally introducing himself formally. "Clerk Thompson," he said, his tone measured yet laced with curiosity, "you've demonstrated extraordinary skill today. I need to understand how you know so much and why it has remained hidden." Sarah met his gaze, calm and unflinching, her expression neutral, but her eyes hinting at stories untold. She did not answer immediately. Instead, she continued her administrative tasks, methodically logging results, cataloging equipment, and reviewing the day's reports. Whitaker recognized the deliberate patience in her response. She revealed only what she chose on her own terms. The colonel realized that this was not mere modesty. It was discipline, strategy, and a survival instinct. Sarah had learned that skill, especially skill as dangerous as hers, was a liability if revealed indiscriminately. She had been operating under the guise of ordinariness, by design, not chance. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the desert sky with orange and violet hues, Whitaker lingered near the office doorway. He observed her closing tasks with the same calm precision that had defined her entire day. He realized that Sarah Thompson was a paradox, ordinary in appearance, yet extraordinary in action, silent in demeanor, yet commanding in influence, a clerk by assignment, yet a master of lethal skill. The juxtaposition fascinated him. Here was someone who had existed unnoticed, quietly shaping the efficiency and effectiveness of the range, all while hiding a history that would stagger most minds. Whitaker left the range that evening with a new determination. He needed answers, but he also understood the delicacy required. Sarah's abilities were not just impressive, they were dangerous in the wrong context. He resolved to approach her cautiously, to learn the truth without violating trust or provoking fear. Observing her had been enlightening, but the next step would be crucial. Recognition, after all, came with responsibility, and Whitaker knew he had to balance curiosity with discretion. In her office, Sarah reviewed her logs and adjusted schedules for the next day, completely unaware of the magnitude of Whitaker's scrutiny. She had performed flawlessly, corrected mistakes, and guided soldiers with subtle authority, all while maintaining the appearance of a diligent clerk. Her calm exterior masked the lethal instincts and extensive training that defined her existence. The colonel's interest, while unspoken, would soon force her to confront a choice: reveal the truth of her past or continue blending into the background, unseen and underestimated. As the base settled into evening quiet, the desert exhaled beneath the fading light. Sarah completed her final tasks, organized equipment, and glanced once more at the horizon. She was invisible to the casual observer, a clerk among soldiers. Yet beneath that calm exterior lay a reservoir of skill, precision, and lethal experience. Whitaker, walking back to his quarters, understood only a fraction of the truth, but it was enough to know that the clerk was unlike anyone he had ever encountered. For the first time, Sarah Thompson was being seen, not for her administrative skills, not for her polite efficiency, but for the extraordinary precision, experience, and discipline that had always defined her, waiting quietly to be recognized. And in that moment, the stage was set for revelation, an unveiling that would challenge assumptions, inspire awe, and forever change the way the base viewed the quiet clerk who had always been far more than she appeared. Colonel James Whitaker waited outside Sarah Thompson's office, the fading light of the Nevada desert casting long shadows across the base. He had observed her for days, witnessed her precision, her calm authority, and the quiet mastery she exerted over the firing range. Every subtle adjustment, every flawless correction, had convinced him that she was no ordinary clerk. Yet he also knew the delicate balance required. He could sense the depth of her abilities, but pressing too hard or too soon could unsettle someone who had survived in shadows for years. Finally, with measured patience, he tapped gently on the office door. "Clerk Thompson," he said, his tone calm but edged with curiosity. "May I speak with you for a moment?" Sarah looked up from her desk, eyes meeting his. Her expression remained calm, unreadable, yet Whitaker sensed a flicker of recognition, a silent acknowledgement that the time for concealment might be ending. She gestured for him to enter, closing the door behind him. The quiet hum of the office contrasted sharply with the tension that now hung in the air. Whitaker began cautiously. "I've been observing your work on the range. Your skills, your adjustments, the way you guide soldiers, it's unlike anything I've ever seen. You aren't just a clerk. I need to understand who you really are." Sarah leaned back slightly, her gaze steady and unwavering. There was a moment of silence, charged with unspoken histories and untold stories. Whitaker could feel the weight of the past pressing beneath the calm exterior of this unassuming woman. She had waited long enough. She spoke finally, her voice low and measured. "Colonel, what you've seen is only a fraction of what I am capable of. I didn't come here to impress anyone or seek recognition. I came here to have a semblance of normalcy, after years where normalcy was impossible." Whitaker leaned in, attentive, recognizing the gravity of her words. Her calmness was deliberate, the careful restraint of someone who had endured far more than most could imagine. He knew he was about to hear something extraordinary. Sarah continued, revealing fragments of her past with careful precision. She had served in a top-secret sniper unit overseas, assigned to missions so classified that even her presence here was technically under a veil of secrecy. She spoke of long deployments in hostile environments, of operations carried out in silence, and of lives she had taken to save others. Whitaker listened, astonished, as she described 121 confirmed kills targets engaged at distances and circumstances most could only dream of. The precision, the discipline, and the composure she displayed in mundane tasks at the base were directly forged from these experiences. Colonel Whitaker felt a mix of awe and disbelief. 121 confirmed kills? He asked, almost unable to form the words. Sarah nodded, her eyes unwavering. Every mission required absolute focus, patience, and accuracy. Every decision could mean life or death, not just for me, but for those I was protecting. The skills you've seen on the range are habits ingrained over years of necessity. They are instinct now, automatic. What you witnessed during the surprise drill is nothing extraordinary to me. It's routine. Whitaker exhaled slowly, absorbing the weight of her revelation. He had trained soldiers for decades, led combat operations, and reviewed countless tactical reports, yet nothing compared to this. Sarah's story reshaped his understanding of discipline, skill, and humility. She had operated in shadows, her extraordinary abilities hidden beneath the mundane tasks of clerical work. Her unassuming demeanor was not humility, it was a strategy, a survival mechanism cultivated over years of exposure to high-stakes, lethal environments. Whitaker realized that this clerk had saved lives, shaped missions, and survived impossible odds while remaining unnoticed. Sarah paused, allowing the gravity of her confession to settle. Whitaker regarded her with a mixture of respect and cautious curiosity. "Why reveal this to me now?" he asked. Her gaze remained steady, unwavering. "Because," she said, "someone needed to see the truth. Someone who could handle it responsibly. I cannot undo the past, nor do I wish to boast about it, but the skill, discipline, and judgment you witnessed on the range, those are tools honed over a lifetime. You must understand, Colonel, that skill carries responsibility, and exposure can be dangerous if handled carelessly." Whitaker nodded, fully aware of the implications. He realized the delicate balance of trust required. Revealing such a history to the wrong person could compromise security, endanger lives, and attract attention Sarah did not want. Yet here she was, speaking openly with him, assessing him as carefully as he had assessed her over the past days. The unspoken agreement was clear. Whitaker would respect the boundaries of disclosure, but he could not ignore what he had witnessed. Her abilities demanded recognition, guidance, and understanding, not just admiration. Sarah elaborated on the training, discipline, and strategy that had shaped her. She explained that long-range marksmanship was not merely about aiming, it was about anticipating variables, reading terrain, understanding human behavior, and remaining calm under extreme pressure. Every adjustment on the Nevada range, every subtle intervention during drills, was informed by years of experience in environments where mistakes could be fatal. Whitaker listened intently, amazed by her methodical approach to skill and survival. Each revelation reinforced what he had suspected. This woman was a living testament to precision, patience, and lethal capability. She spoke carefully of the missions themselves, without breaching classified details, offering glimpses of the operational environment, strategic planning, and execution required in sniper assignments. Whitaker could see how the discipline had translated seamlessly to the civilian administrative context of the base. Every action, every observation, every intervention was infused with the same tactical mindset that had saved lives overseas. He realized that her presence at the base was a choice, a deliberate attempt to find normalcy, to exist quietly while maintaining readiness, and to apply her skills in subtle, non-combative ways. Whitaker leaned back, considering the enormity of what he had learned. Sarah Thompson was no longer just a clerk in his eyes. She was a master of her craft, a strategist, and a survivor. Her 121 confirmed kills were more than numbers. They were a testament to discipline, courage, and unwavering focus. Yet her humility, restraint, and desire for anonymity were equally remarkable. Whitaker felt a profound respect and a sense of responsibility. This was not simply a revelation of skill. It was an awakening to the presence of someone extraordinary who had existed in plain sight for too long. The conversation shifted toward her current role at the base. Whitaker asked, "How do you manage the balance between your skills and the clerical duties here?" Sarah smiled faintly, a subtle acknowledgement of the dual life she had maintained. Routine tasks provide structure and control. They offer a semblance of normalcy after years of chaos. The skills you observed are latent. They are not on display unless necessary. Here, I maintain order, train subtly, and observe. It is enough for this environment, and it keeps me grounded. Her words were calm, yet each carried the weight of experience and self-awareness. Whitaker nodded, impressed by her composure. He realized that Sarah's presence at the base was intentional, a choice born from a desire for stability after years of extreme environments. Her ability to blend seamlessly into the background, to remain unnoticed while maintaining control and precision, was as impressive as her lethal skill set. He recognized that leadership, discipline, and expertise were not always loud or visible. They could exist quietly, subtly influencing outcomes without fanfare. In Sarah's case, it was not just influence. It was mastery. The colonel then asked a question he had hesitated to voice until now. Do you ever regret the past? The missions? The lives you've taken? Sarah's expression softened, but her gaze remained steady. Regret is irrelevant, she said. Each action was necessary, precise, and unavoidable. I do not dwell on the past. I focus on the present, the skills, the discipline, the control I maintain every day. They are tools, not burdens. Survival demands clarity, not hesitation. Her words were matter of fact, yet they resonated deeply with Whitaker. She had mastered not only her craft, but also the emotional calculus required to survive. By the time the conversation concluded, the sun had dipped below the horizon, casting the Nevada desert in twilight. Whitaker rose, feeling a mixture of awe, respect, and responsibility. Sarah Thompson was no longer merely a clerk. She was a living embodiment of precision, discipline, and lethal skill, tempered by restraint and humility. Her revelations had redefined his understanding of skill, identity, and human capability. He realized that her presence at the base was both a gift and a challenge, to recognize extraordinary talent without disrupting the balance she had so carefully maintained. As Whitaker left the office, he reflected on the weight of what he had learned. Sarah Thompson had existed in plain sight, a clerk to all appearances, yet a master of lethal skill in reality. The challenge now was to respect her boundaries while recognizing her value, to acknowledge her past without exploiting it, and to provide opportunities for her abilities to contribute meaningfully, safely, and discreetly. In that moment, he understood that leadership was not just about rank, it was about discernment, judgment, and the ability to see the extraordinary where others saw only the ordinary. Sarah returned to her desk, calmly reviewing logs, adjusting schedules, and cataloging equipment as though nothing extraordinary had occurred. The revelations she had shared with Whitaker were precise and controlled, yet they had fundamentally changed the dynamic between them. She had allowed a glimpse into her past, enough to establish trust, respect, and understanding, but not so much as to expose herself fully. Her dual life as clerk and as master sniper remained intact, carefully balanced, and perfectly controlled. In the fading light, Sarah glanced out over the range, her eyes scanning targets, equipment, and the terrain. She had revealed enough to ensure that her expertise would be recognized by someone capable of understanding its magnitude. Whitaker had seen, and he understood. That understanding was both rare and precious. For the first time, her skill set was acknowledged by someone in authority, yet her autonomy remained intact. In that quiet moment, the foundation was laid for a relationship built on mutual respect, trust, and recognition of unparalleled ability. Sarah Thompson was no longer invisible. She had chosen the right observer, and in doing so, she had ensured that her extraordinary skill would no longer go entirely unnoticed. The Nevada base, the soldiers, and the colonel himself would never see her the same way again. She was both ordinary and extraordinary, a clerk in appearance, a master of precision and lethal skill in reality, quietly shaping the world around her with discipline, patience, and unseen power. By the next morning, word of Sarah Thompson's revealed past began to ripple subtly through the Nevada base, though few could comprehend the full magnitude of what had transpired. Colonel Whitaker had not broadcast the revelation. Discretion was vital. Yet the change in perception was immediate and palpable. Soldiers and instructors, once indifferent or mildly amused by her quiet efficiency, now found themselves watching her with a mixture of curiosity, respect, and a touch of awe. Whispers floated through the barracks and firing lines. A clerk. But a sniper? The stories spread slowly, each retelling adding a hint of incredulity, each listener attempting to reconcile the ordinary face with the extraordinary skill. Sarah arrived at the office, clipboard in hand, her expression serene, as always. She noticed the subtle shift immediately, the slight straightening of posture among passing soldiers, the quick, respectful nods, the hushed murmurs that ceased whenever she glanced in their direction. She remained undisturbed, as though aware that this transformation was inevitable, and that perception, once altered, could not be unaltered. The reality was that she had always been remarkable, but until now, few had grasped the depth of her capability. This new awareness, however, required careful management. Recognition could be dangerous if mishandled, and she had spent years cultivating invisibility for a reason. Colonel Whitaker entered her office mid-morning, a measured smile on his face. "Sarah," he said, "I trust you understand the potential consequences if your past were to become common knowledge too quickly." Sarah nodded, her calm composure unwavering. "I understand," she replied, her voice low and deliberate. "That is why I reveal only what is necessary, and to those capable of discretion. Most people do not need to know." Exposure could create unnecessary risk, Whitaker agreed, recognizing that her caution was a continuation of the survival instinct that had defined her career. The lessons of experience were never far from her thoughts. Meanwhile, the range was buzzing with subtle changes in behavior. Soldiers who had once ignored her guidance now sought her approval, some cautiously, others with genuine curiosity. Instructors who had doubted her interventions now deferred to her judgment, quietly acknowledging her expertise without overtly challenging the hierarchy. Even seasoned marksmen, those who prided themselves on years of training, found themselves inspired and, in some cases, unsettled. How could someone in an administrative role, with no apparent operational authority, outperform them in technical skill, judgment, and situational awareness? The base's social structure had shifted imperceptibly, yet irrevocably. Sarah continued her work with meticulous attention to detail, aware of the growing tension and curiosity around her. She moved among the weapons, verifying inventory, checking condition, and ensuring compliance with safety protocols. Each action was precise, deliberate, and authoritative, yet entirely unobtrusive. Soldiers watched, trying to glean insight, but her discipline, honed over years in life-and-death situations, remained subtle and controlled. Even Whitaker, who had gained her trust, could only glimpse a fraction of the depth she carried within her. The quiet clerk, it seemed, was now both a figure of fascination and a symbol of understated mastery. By mid-afternoon, an instructor approached Sarah cautiously. "Ma'am," he began, hesitant, "I don't understand. How did you handle the range during the drill? Some of the adjustments you made seemed impossible." Sarah regarded him calmly, her eyes steady. "Impossible is a matter of perspective," she replied softly. "I have trained to anticipate errors, correct for variables, and maintain control under extreme pressure. Today, the environment was challenging, but not extraordinary. What you saw was discipline, observation, and practice. Nothing more." Her words were simple, yet they carried the weight of experience and authority. The instructor nodded, a mixture of awe and disbelief on his face. He returned to his duties, attempting to replicate her methods, though none could match the quiet efficiency she displayed. Whispers among the soldiers grew louder, though always cautious. Rumors of her 121 confirmed kills, her past missions, and her precision on the range began to circulate in hushed tones, carefully avoiding confrontation with the chain of command. Sarah was aware of the whispers, but she neither encouraged nor discouraged them. She had learned long ago that control over information was as important as control over weapons. Colonel Whitaker convened a private meeting with senior instructors to discuss the implications. "We have observed something remarkable," he began. "Sarah Thompson is more than a clerk. Her skill, judgment, and precision surpass our expectations and challenge our assumptions about operational roles. It is imperative that we respect her discretion and allow her to operate within her chosen framework. Her abilities must be acknowledged carefully, not sensationalized. She is an asset, but one who requires trust and understanding." The instructors exchanged glances, some nodding, others clearly unsettled by the disruption to their established hierarchy. As the day progressed, Sarah continued to blend seamlessly into the administrative rhythm while subtly shaping the performance of the base. Soldiers adapted to her presence, internalizing her methods without always realizing it. Mistakes were corrected quietly, efficiency improved incrementally, and morale shifted in unexpected ways. The mere awareness that she possessed extraordinary capability had a psychological effect. Soldiers performed better, instructors deferred to her judgment, and the base operated with a newfound cohesion. Sarah's influence, though largely invisible, was pervasive. By late afternoon, Whitaker observed her overseeing a long-range exercise with her usual calm authority. She crouched slightly, scanning distances, evaluating wind direction, and calculating adjustments with the instinctive precision of a seasoned sniper. A young recruit struggled with posture, misaligning his rifle repeatedly. Sarah approached silently, guiding him with subtle touches and quiet instructions. Within moments, the recruit's performance improved dramatically. Whitaker watched, fascinated, as her guidance transformed the ordinary into the exceptional without raising her voice or asserting rank. Her skill was invisible yet undeniable. Word of her abilities began to attract discreet attention from higher levels of command. Whitaker recognized the delicate balance. While her expertise was invaluable, exposure to the wrong audience could compromise both operational security and her safety. He implemented a controlled approach, ensuring that her skills were leveraged strategically while maintaining her autonomy. Sarah's influence continued to grow subtly, shaping training outcomes, refining procedures, and inspiring soldiers without disrupting the established order. Her quiet mastery became a hidden force, reshaping perceptions without overt acknowledgement. As dusk fell over the base, Sarah returned to her office, methodically cataloging weapons, reviewing logs, and preparing for the next day. Whitaker followed briefly, pausing at the doorway. "Sarah," he said, "what you've done here, quietly, efficiently, without seeking recognition, is extraordinary. Your presence has reshaped how the entire base functions. I want to ensure that we support you, protect your discretion, and learn from your expertise. How do you wish to proceed?" Sarah regarded him calmly, her eyes steady. "Colonel, I operate best when unnoticed, yet effective. Guidance and trust are sufficient. Oversight and interference could be detrimental. Let discretion remain our priority, and results will follow naturally." Whitaker nodded, recognizing the wisdom in her words. He understood that her approach, honed over years of survival and precision, was as strategic as her marksmanship. Her influence could be maximized only through trust, subtlety, and careful management. The base, he realized, was witnessing the emergence of an extraordinary talent who chose to remain largely invisible, impacting outcomes without overt recognition or authority. It was a lesson in leadership, humility, and mastery. By evening, the base was quiet. Soldiers returned to their quarters, instructors finalized reports, and the desert exhaled beneath the fading sun. Sarah sat at her desk, reviewing logs and ensuring compliance with protocols, her expression serene as always. Whitaker observed from a distance, reflecting on the transformation her presence had created. The whispers, the curiosity, and the awe were inevitable consequences of her revealed past, yet she managed them with subtle control. The quiet clerk was now a recognized force, reshaping perceptions and performance through discipline, skill, and presence. As she looked out over the firing range under the violet hues of twilight, Sarah allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction. The base was aware, the colonel understood, and her influence, though largely invisible, was unmistakable. She had revealed only what was necessary, maintained control over her narrative, and ensured that her extraordinary skills were acknowledged responsibly. In this delicate balance of discretion and recognition, she had found her rhythm once again. Sarah Thompson, the clerk with 121 confirmed kills and decades of lethal experience, remained an enigma. Ordinary in appearance, extraordinary in skill, she quietly shaped the environment around her, ensuring efficiency, safety, and precision. The base would never view her the same way again, and yet she retained her calm composure, her autonomy, and her control. The ripples of her revelation had begun to spread, transforming perceptions, inspiring soldiers, and challenging assumptions, all without a single overt declaration of authority. And in that twilight desert silence, Sarah Thompson continued her work, unassuming yet profoundly impactful, a force both invisible and undeniable, quietly reshaping the world around her one precise action at a time. The next morning, a low desert sun glinted off the barrels of rifles, neatly arranged along the firing range, the hum of activity rising steadily as soldiers arrived for routine drills. Yet beneath the surface of ordinary operations, something had shifted. The revelation of Sarah Thompson's past, a clerk with 121 confirmed kills, and the lethal expertise of a seasoned sniper, had begun to spread through the base like wildfire, though carefully filtered through whispers and conjecture. Soldiers who had once dismissed her as a quiet administrator now approached her with cautious reverence, while instructors and officers struggled to reconcile their assumptions with the extraordinary reality. Even without seeking recognition, Sarah could feel the subtle change in the air. She walked among the rows of rifles and sandbags with her usual calm composure, clipboard in hand, yet she noticed the slight straightening of posture as soldiers passed, the hushed conversations that paused whenever she glanced in their direction. Her presence had shifted from routine to extraordinary, and she understood the delicate balance required to maintain control. Too much attention could disrupt training. Too little could allow inefficiency to flourish. In her quiet, measured way, she had become the fulcrum of the base. Colonel Whitaker had arranged another subtle test. A complex series of drills had been designed to challenge even the most experienced marksmen, including long-range shots, moving targets, and unpredictable environmental factors like shifting wind and dust storms. Whitaker observed from a concealed vantage point, curious to see how Sarah would respond under conditions designed to push ordinary soldiers and even seasoned instructors beyond their limits. He had no doubt she would perform with precision, but he wanted to see her instinctive reactions when confronted with multiple, simultaneous challenges. The drill began, chaos erupting in a controlled fashion as soldiers scrambled to adjust positions, assess wind, and aim at targets. Recruits fumbled with rifles, instructors shouted corrections, and targets swung slightly out of alignment under the desert breeze. Sarah moved among them with the fluidity of a predator, silent but authoritative. She corrected minor misalignments with a flick of her wrist, advised on breathing and stance with a single whispered phrase, and anticipated errors before they occurred. Every action was precise, deliberate, and effective, yet executed in a way that appeared almost casual to the untrained eye. Whispers spread quickly among the soldiers. "Did you see that?" muttered one. "She just corrected 3 rifles at once, without even touching the triggers." Another added, "I can't believe how calm she is." How does she know what to do before anyone else even realizes it? Even seasoned instructors exchanged incredulous glances. The rumors of her past, now circulating more openly, lent credence to the impossible displays of skill unfolding before them. Sarah Thompson, a clerk in appearance, was demonstrating capabilities that defied explanation. Whitaker watched intently, noting the precision of her movements, the subtle timing of her interventions, and the psychological effect on the soldiers. Her presence was transformative. Novices performed with newfound confidence, instructors deferred silently, and the environment, which had begun in chaos, became a coordinated symphony of precision. Whitaker realized that her influence extended far beyond technical skill. She commanded respect and attention without asserting authority, guided outcomes without overtly directing, and elevated performance without recognition. She had become both a force and a stabilizer. As the drill intensified, a moving target was introduced, swinging unpredictably across the far end of the range. Several shooters attempted to track it, but environmental factors wind gusts, heat waves, and dust caused repeated misses. Sarah adjusted subtly from her position near the line, calculating trajectory, distance, and timing in a way that seemed almost instantaneous. She leaned slightly, whispered a precise adjustment to one soldier, and indicated stance modifications to another. Within moments, shots that had been consistently off target now struck with near-perfect accuracy. Soldiers and instructors alike were stunned. By midday, her reputation had reached almost mythical proportions. The whispers grew louder, cautiously excited, as soldiers and instructors shared stories of her flawless corrections and uncanny precision. Some joked nervously about calling her the ghost sniper, while others simply stared, unsure how to articulate their awe. Sarah, for her part, remained calm, aware of the perception shift, but careful not to let it disrupt the base's operations. Recognition, she knew, had to be managed carefully. Excessive attention could undermine both efficiency and security. Colonel Whitaker approached her privately during a brief pause in drills. "Sarah," he said, voice low, "your impact today has been remarkable. Even with your past revealed to a few, your influence is spreading faster than I anticipated. How do you manage the perception without letting it spiral out of control?" Sarah looked up calmly, eyes steady. "Discipline, observation, and subtle control," she replied. "I ensure that my interventions improve performance, but never overshadow the soldier's effort. Recognition is unnecessary. Skill should elevate outcomes, not egos. This is how I maintain balance." Whitaker nodded, impressed by her clarity and focus. The afternoon brought further challenges. An unexpected environmental shift with sudden gusts of wind, a series of moving targets, and a simulated equipment malfunction designed to test problem-solving under stress. Soldiers and instructors faltered repeatedly, but Sarah's presence transformed near disaster into coordinated success. She corrected errors silently, anticipated problems, and guided responses with precise, understated instructions. Her past missions, she explained to herself internally, had taught her that chaos could be controlled only through anticipation, discipline, and calm execution. Each drill reinforced the truth of her skill, and each success amplified the quiet awe of those observing. By evening, the drill concluded with unprecedented accuracy. Soldiers who had struggled earlier now performed with consistency and confidence. Instructors acknowledged her subtle guidance, and the base itself hummed with efficiency. Whispers about the clerk, with 121 confirmed kills, circulated with increasing intensity, though still measured out of respect for security. Sarah returned to her office, meticulously logging results and preparing for the next day. She was aware of her growing reputation, yet remained unflappable, a model of quiet authority and invisible mastery. Even as she worked, she reflected on the subtle transformations she had initiated. Soldiers were inspired by her skill, instructors respected her judgment, and the environment of the base had shifted toward a higher standard of precision and discipline. Her impact was profound, yet achieved without ostentation. Sarah's dual existence, ordinary clerk, an extraordinary operative, remained intact, and her quiet influence ensured the base operated at a level far above expectation. Recognition, she reminded herself, was secondary to results and control. Colonel Whitaker remained a vigilant observer. He understood that her reputation, while growing, needed careful management. Sarah's abilities were exceptional, but they were also sensitive. Mismanaged recognition could create jealousy, confusion, or even security risks. Yet he also realized that her skill, discipline, and judgment were invaluable assets that could no longer be overlooked. The challenge was to integrate her influence without disrupting the chain of command or compromising her autonomy. It was a delicate balance, one that required patience, discretion, and respect for her expertise. As the sun dipped below the desert horizon, Sarah glanced across the range, taking stock of the orderly chaos she had orchestrated. Soldiers filed out with improved confidence. Instructors returned equipment with a renewed sense of precision, and the base settled into an evening rhythm far more disciplined than it had begun. Whitaker observed from a distance, reflecting on the subtle, profound shift she had created. The clerk had become a force quiet, measured, and undeniable. Her past, once hidden, had amplified her influence, shaping perceptions, performance, and respect in ways that would resonate for weeks to come. In the fading light, Sarah returned to her office, cataloging weapons and reviewing logs with her usual meticulous care. She allowed herself a brief moment of reflection, acknowledging the ripple effect of her actions, without allowing ego or recognition to cloud her judgment. Her reputation had grown, her influence expanded, yet she remained grounded in the discipline and control that had defined her life. The base would never see her the same way again, and she had orchestrated that transformation with subtle precision. Sarah Thompson, the clerk with 121 confirmed kills, had become a legend in quiet. Ordinary in appearance, extraordinary in skill, she had demonstrated mastery, discipline, and presence without demanding recognition. Soldiers and instructors alike were captivated, inspired, and occasionally unsettled, yet her influence remained measured, controlled, and profoundly effective. As darkness settled over the desert, she reviewed her logs one final time, ensuring order and precision. Her work was never finished, her vigilance never relaxed, and her quiet authority continued to shape the world around her, imperceptibly yet undeniably. The Nevada desert woke to a crisp morning, the sunlight glinting off rifles, sandbags, and the faint shimmer of heat waves rising from the range. For most soldiers, it was another day of routine drills, yet beneath the surface, anticipation buzzed quietly in the air. Whispers of Sarah Thompson's passed the clerk, with 121 confirmed kills. The lethal sniper whose skill had reshaped the base had reached almost everyone now. The stories were told carefully, in hushed tones, out of respect for discretion, yet the awe they inspired was unmistakable. Sarah's influence had become inseparable from the rhythm of the base. She moved among the pies, soldiers with her usual calm composure, clipboard tucked under her arm, eyes scanning every detail with meticulous care. The morning drills were complex, combining long-range shooting, tactical positioning, and rapid decision-making exercises. Yet Sarah's presence transformed chaos into precise order. Every adjustment she made, every instruction she offered, elevated soldiers' performance, improved coordination, and instilled confidence without a word of overt authority. She had become the invisible hand guiding the base, subtle, unassuming, yet undeniably commanding respect. Colonel Whitaker watched from the observation tower, his notes reflecting the extraordinary phenomena unfolding. He had observed Sarah for weeks, gaining insight into both her lethal skill and her remarkable ability to inspire and control outcomes subtly. The ripple effect of her presence was now fully visible. Soldiers executed drills flawlessly. Instructors deferred instinctively, and even the most skeptical personnel had come to accept her quiet mastery. Whitaker's admiration was profound, tempered by a recognition of the delicate balance required to preserve discretion. Sarah's influence was immense, yet fragile. The morning progressed, and Whitaker observed an unusual scenario being simulated. A high-stakes, multi-target engagement with variable distances and unpredictable wind conditions. Several advanced trainees struggled to maintain accuracy, miscalculating trajectories or failing to adjust for environmental shifts. Sarah stepped forward, subtle adjustments ready in her mind. She bent slightly, recalibrated a misaligned rifle for one soldier, adjusted stance and breathing for another, and whispered a single precise correction to a third. Within moments, their shots struck targets dead center. The collective gasps of astonishment were quiet but unmistakable. By midday, the story of her capabilities had reached nearly everyone on the base. Soldiers whispered about her past missions, about the confirmed kills and the discipline forged under impossible conditions. Her reputation had grown from curiosity to legend, yet she remained as unassuming as ever. Even those who had doubted her skill could not ignore the truth. Sarah Thompson was extraordinary. Her calm authority, instinctive precision, and quiet influence had reshaped perceptions of leadership, skill, and capability. Whitaker approached her privately during a short break. "Sarah," he said, "your impact is unprecedented. The base is operating at a level far beyond what I've seen before, and much of it is because of you. How do you maintain this control without letting it affect morale or hierarchy?" She looked at him calmly, eyes steady. "Discipline and observation, Colonel. Recognition and authority are tools, but they can also create imbalance. I guide, correct, and influence, but I do not dominate. The results speak for themselves." Whitaker nodded, understanding that her philosophy was as strategic as her marksmanship. The afternoon brought a sudden, unexpected complication. A simulated emergency had been inserted, a malfunctioning moving target that required split-second calculations, rapid adjustments, and coordination across multiple shooters. Soldiers faltered under the pressure, misfiring or hesitating at critical moments. Sarah's instincts took over. She moved swiftly, her corrections precise and unobtrusive, her guidance delivered in soft instructions and subtle gestures. Shots that had previously missed now struck with perfection. Instructors and soldiers alike watched in disbelief, understanding that what they were witnessing was not routine skill, but a mastery that defied explanation. Word of the exercise spread quickly, further amplifying her reputation. Soldiers shared stories of her flawless corrections, whispering among themselves about the clerk who could command outcomes without a word, a flick of the wrist, or even a raised voice. Even the most skeptical instructors found themselves both impressed and unsettled. The base had undergone a transformation, not through orders or rank, but through Sarah's quiet, pervasive influence. Her presence had elevated performance, morale, and discipline in ways that were subtle yet undeniably profound. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, Whitaker convened a small, discreet meeting with Sarah. "Your impact today, these results are remarkable," he said. "The entire base is responding to you. Soldiers perform better, efficiency has improved, and even morale seems elevated. But this also places you at the center of attention. How do you wish to proceed?" Sarah regarded him calmly, her eyes reflecting decades of discipline. "Control and discretion," she replied. "I will continue to guide, to correct, to observe. Recognition is secondary. Results matter." That is enough. Despite her desire for discretion, the reality was that her legend had begun to permeate the base in subtle ways. Soldiers sought her guidance more openly. Instructors deferred to her judgment instinctively, and whispers of her past missions and skill circulated widely, though carefully. Her reputation had become both protective and influential, establishing her as a figure of quiet authority. Even those who had once dismissed her as a clerk could no longer ignore the truth. She was extraordinary. That evening, Whitaker observed her completing routine administrative tasks, cataloging weapons and reviewing logs with meticulous care. She moved with the same precision she displayed on the range, every gesture deliberate, every check thorough. Yet her thoughts were already on tomorrow's drills, on the continued elevation of performance, and on maintaining the delicate balance between recognition and discretion. Her dual life as ordinary clerk and extraordinary operative remained intact, a testament to discipline, patience, and mastery. As darkness fell, soldiers left the range, instructors packed equipment, and the desert settled into a quiet rhythm. Whitaker approached her one final time for the day. "Sarah, I want you to know, what you've accomplished here goes beyond skill. You've redefined perception, influenced outcomes, and inspired an entire base. Few people could do what you have without disrupting order. Few could maintain control while remaining so understated. Your legacy is already forming." Sarah met his gaze, expression calm, voice measured. "That is all I need to know, Colonel. Influence quietly, act deliberately, and ensure results. That is my legacy." Later that night, Sarah sat at her desk, reflecting on the transformation she had helped orchestrate. Soldiers performed with newfound confidence, instructors deferred respectfully, and the base operated with a cohesion it had never known before. Her presence had been catalytic, her influence transformative, yet she remained as unassuming as ever. Her past, the 121 confirmed kills, the lethal missions, the discipline forged in life and death scenarios, had become a tool for quiet mentorship rather than overt demonstration. She had crafted a legacy, not of recognition, but of elevated performance and inspired competence. Whitaker observed from his quarters, reflecting on the profound lessons of the past days. Leadership, skill, and influence were not always visible or loud. Sometimes the most extraordinary capabilities existed quietly, subtly shaping outcomes and inspiring awe without drawing attention. Sarah Thompson had redefined what it meant to lead, to influence, and to master one's craft. The base had witnessed transformation not through commands, but through the understated brilliance of one extraordinary individual who chose discretion over recognition, skill over ego, and impact over accolades. As the desert sky darkened, Sarah completed her logs, ensured the weapons were secure, and prepared for the next day with the same calm, deliberate efficiency that had defined her career. Her influence on the base was now permanent, her reputation quietly legendary, and her mastery fully recognized by those who truly understood its depth. She had taken the ordinary and elevated it to extraordinary through discipline, precision, and subtle authority. Sarah Thompson, clerk and sniper, ordinary in appearance but extraordinary in capability, had left an indelible mark on the Nevada base. Soldiers would speak of her quietly, instructors would reflect on her subtle interventions, and Colonel Whitaker would forever remember the lessons she imparted, not just about skill, but about patience, discretion, and mastery. Her story, now fully revealed, was not one of fanfare or public acclaim, but of quiet transformation, controlled influence, and unmatched excellence. And as the desert night settled over the range, the clerk with 121 confirmed kills closed her notebook, glanced once more at the horizon, and allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. She had changed the base, shaped the soldiers, and demonstrated mastery without ever needing to demand attention. Her legacy, invisible yet undeniable, would endure far longer than any rumor, report, or accolade. Sarah Thompson remained extraordinary, unseen to some, revered by others. and a force of precision and discipline that would define the Nevada base for years to come.